Felipe, thank you so much for actually extending the offer to do an interview and talk about your company, which is, and by the way, sorry, is it Felipe or Philippe?
It's Felipe, correct.
It is Felipe. Okay, good.
That's
I got
the
it right.
Spanish pronunciation for Felipe. Yeah, correct.
Well, you know, the English are terrible with pronunciations and foreign languages, so I have to be unabashedly unashamed of butchering anybody's name. Um, so Demetria, I looked that up. I'm not going to pretend I was this erudite, but I looked it up as the Greek goddess of harvests or harvesting. Is that about
Correct.
right?
Correct. We chose the name exactly because of that. And I am sort of a nerd on Greek mythology and stuff like that. So I thought that if we were doing something in agriculture and harvesting, I thought that name was good. And it's also good because it's in Latinized names, it's to measure, right? Or it's an inflection of to measure. And that
Oh.
is exactly what we're doing. So that's why we chose that name.
And have you, if you're a fanatic of mythology, have you read Stephen Fry's book?
Not yet. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy at this time. I pretty much don't have any other time except for some exercise and getting meals inside my body, and that's it.
That's the crazy world of the startup. So let's dig into it because I know you're limited on time. It's correct to say that you're an Israeli-based startup, but you're out in Colombia, correct?
So yeah, we're both based in Colombia and in Israel, sort of, and that's part of I think the secret of our success. That what we do is obviously Israel is very well known on innovation and agtech innovation. But what we sort of recognize is that a lot of the innovation that happens in Israel is focused on sort of like seasonal crops, never tropical crops, like coffee in itself. And what we saw is that a lot of those technologies we could adapt and develop for tropical crops. And that's in a sense how Demetria got formed. We saw technology, we understood sort of the problematic or the issues around sort of the value chains in coffee and other commodities as well. And we said, okay, there's a huge value to bridge that gap, to sort of adopt technology that already was proven for other crops, but on a revolutionary way in tropical crops.
We should probably start. We should probably start, Felipe, by actually saying what Demetria does. I've downloaded your apps, by the way, and I tried to log in, but it wouldn't let me. But I
no, but we can set you up. We can set you up. It has to be. It's not designed for somebody to go right off.
I was just seeing how far I could get. I actually didn't expect to get it running. But let's tell everybody what Demetria is all about, because it's kind of radical.
Yeah. So we are about sort of the problem in coffee, at least the way we see it, or the opportunity, depends on where you stand. The opportunity in coffee is very significant because coffee has gone through a voyage of premiumization. Okay, so coffee today is more an experience rather than just basically getting your caffeine rush in the morning or wherever in the day, whenever in the day. And taste or the sensory experience of coffee is the most important value driver. And we're still doing the same assessment of taste that has been done for centuries, which is actually doing a cupping test, which is an expert, qualified expert does the cupping. This means that because it's a qualified cupper, the vast majority, if not 100% of the smallholder farmers in the world, people don't necessarily understand this, but probably your podcast listeners do if they understand coffee. It's smallholder farmers, so it's 2 to 4 hectares on average, and that is the case, for example, here in Colombia. So it's amazing that the vast majority of uh, coffee growers have never tasted their coffee. They don't know what they produce. So what we are about is about transforming the way we assess the quality of coffee through technology. So we've developed a technology that allows anyone, anywhere, with a sensor and a smartphone or a tablet, to be able to assess the sensorial quality. You can call it taste, but you're not tasting it, of coffee in green coffee beans. And this, we believe, is potentially revolutionary for the industry because it gives farmers a level of empowerment that they didn't have before. Because evidently, if what you don't measure, you don't manage. So we kid around in the industry, at least that I've seen, it's that sort of coffee, the fact that sometimes coffee is volatile. You probably understand this, that it's not only the terroir, which is generates the quality of the coffee, but from harvest to harvest, it changes. And if this is such a volatile quality generating sort of process, and there's no data in this process. There's
Right.
absolutely no data. It's completely intuitive.
So this
And
is, so
that,
you've got, just to be really clear, to
yeah.
anybody new to the company, you've
Mhm.
basically developed an application which you can put on your mobile phone, it's Android or iOS or whatever. You've got an application you can put on the phone, and there's a separate, and I've seen the video of, there's a separate, very
Sensor,
small sensor,
correct.
which is doing what, spectrum analysis.
That's correct.
And I mean, we're talking about the size of, I don't know, a couple of inches, something like that.
Yeah.
And the two pair up, and you scan the beans with the sensor, and the information is passed to the mobile phone, and it gives you information about the taste profile of the beans. Is that in a nutshell? Is that at the beginning?
You
I know you do a lot more than that, but in the beginning, that's
No,
the
no, no.
fundamental heart of it.
That's a very well summarized way of putting it. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly it. So it is ubiquitous. It's allowing ubiquitous measurement of sensory quality. And once again, people in the general public do not understand, but probably your listeners do, is that for you to cup, for you to be able to assess the quality of coffee, you need to take green coffee, which is the standard form of traded coffee, and you need to roast it. And
Hmm.
then you need to prepare a cup of coffee. And it's not only the access to the expert, but it's also access to the equipment. This is
Right.
sophisticated and expensive equipment. So, and it's time consuming. So a cupping session could take like 40 or 50 minutes. So that is in our belief, is a structural market inefficiency, right? The most important quality or the most important value driver in coffee, which is taste, is only measured very few
At the end
times
of the
in
at the end of the value chain.
that. It's crazy. It's crazy,
Right.
and that's what we want to change. That's what we want to change, and so our approach to the market is basically we're developing applications from a top-down way. So we're trying to establish this as from the buyers downwards, so that
Hmm.
buyers get comfortable with the technology to start using it. But our primary goal is to go to the farmers, where
Now
we
the
see the
farmers themselves, I mean, I'm very
yeah.
interested in this because, you know, it's on a separate industry, but we also cover cocoa. And last year we gave a couple hundred bars of chocolate. We bought a couple hundred bars of chocolate. We gave out to farmers in Liberia because these cocoa farmers had never tasted chocolate.
That's
And it was just
correct.
something we
It's
did.
the
We
same
just
thing.
did it right before Christmas because it was a sweet thing to do. But something you said something earlier just really resonated with me, which was that you're saying that farmers have never tasted that some farmers have never tasted their own product.
That's correct. That's
I
correct.
didn't know that.
And yeah, and the reason being is Nick, is that if you think of the market structure, right? So green coffee bean is produced in countries like Colombia, Brazil, etc., and the roasters historically have been in Europe.
Right.
So so uh, so in a nutshell, up until recently in Colombia, only the best coffee was available for. It was easier for you to get the best coffee from Colombia than for me here in Colombia. Okay,
Yeah, I understand.
up
Yeah.
until recently. So typically, what has happened is that because roasting is not done on premise, and just until recently, roasting machines have become miniaturized. So there is
Mm-hmm.
the possibility of doing, let's say, efficient roasting from a micro roasting point of view. And obviously, you probably have touched this in your podcast a lot. So up until recently, it was almost unheard of that a farmer understood the quality of the coffee that they were producing.
So now what they'll do with your equipment, what they'll get is data. So because you're right, they're not going to be tasting it, but they'll get an idea of where their coffee fits in terms of a taste profile and what kind of market there might be, presumably for that kind of flavor, for that kind of coffee. How exactly can you articulate how exactly the farmer will benefit from that knowledge? What will they be able to change something, or will it maybe introduce new opportunities for them to market their beans? But basically, what's in it for the farmer?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It goes to a core of what we want to achieve. And so let me tell you a story, right? And you probably have heard it before. And the story is the following. I've been to these copying contests, right, for a long time here in Colombia and places, other places. And there's the farmers are there, and they submit their coffee for evaluation. And the guys always get the greatest points, and they get awarded the coffee, and they have the lot that I don't know generates a huge profit. You go back and ask them, what did you do differently to produce this cup of coffee? And they cannot answer.
They don't know.
They don't know. They don't know. So it's amazing, right? And these are the farmers that get to these contests are the cream of the crop. So these are the most sophisticated of the sophisticated of the farmers. So it is not only giving them empowerment to understand what they're selling, which is huge, okay? Because and understand this, like in a country like Colombia, a farmer, when they sell their coffee, they go to a cooperative. The cooperative doesn't have the capping capacity. So does the cooperative do? They'll pay you standard commodity price coffee. It's
Yeah.
later down when somebody cups it and understands, oh, this coffee is pretty good, that they understand there's a premium there. The farmer didn't receive that premium. Okay? So that's the first lever of value. The second lever of value is what I just mentioned. Is actually once you start measuring quality, you can manage quality. So it's understanding the processes that helped you or allowed you to produce that quality. There's some processes that you can control, like the terroir, like we were discussing. You cannot control, well, at least you cannot move those levers easily on a weekly basis, like weather, the variety that you have on the ground. But there are a bunch of levers that you can. So everything around fertilization, when you do the harvesting, how you do the fermentation, that is a huge lever.
Huge. That's very key, isn't it? Yeah. A lot of talk on that at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm sure you know about these exotic coffees that need to go through an animal's intestine, and they seem to be the great deal. I've never tasted them,
No,
but
I've got
at the end of the
no
day,
desire for that.
at the end of the day, all those processes are just fermentation processes.
Yeah.
Right. So what we envision is to be able to give data and give tools for farmers. For that farmer that I asked, okay, do you know what happened? And he will say yes. And now I know what I need to do because I have data and I can replicate what I did. And
So this is
I can make it more consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, this makes total sense. So yeah, I mean, I'm actually kind of a numbers guy, so I totally get that. And when I'm going into, if I ever go into a business, and it's very interesting. In our industry, a lot of people talk about ethics. But I learned this a long time ago. I believe you're ex McKinsey. Is this right, McKinsey?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
That's correct.
So about 25 or 30 years ago, I read a book called The McKinsey Way. I can't remember how long. It was a very long time ago. And I still remember some of the lessons I learned from that time. I think I was reading every book I could on big consultancies. I was working for Capgemini actually at the time.
No.
And one of them, I think it was maybe the McKinsey Way, but one of them said, if you want to really, that companies say all sorts of stuff, but if you want to really know what they value, learn what they measure. And if they're not measuring it, they don't value it. So
correct.
Measurements are at the key of everything. So I imagine that this also translates back to you as well, because you need to this system, and there's the talk about it being, AI or machine learning or whatever on the back end. You're getting data. In order for that to really work, you need data to work off of. You need data sets. So presumably, as farmers use this, you're gathering that data. There needs to be presumably some kind of feedback as to if it's telling you, if the data is telling you one thing, at some point that has to be validated or repudiated so that you can learn from that data and say, okay, we didn't quite get that right. We got some things right. We maybe didn't get other things right. We need to improve. How does that, talk us a little bit through how that process works?
That's a very good question, Nick. So that's it. That is why we're taking this top down. Okay, because first we need to establish what is good and what is not good. From a very simplistic point of view, right? And the people who have the power to say that are the ones that are close to the market, the roasters, the ones that understand what is good for you or for me from a coffee perspective. What is quality? Okay, so that's why we're measuring at that level. That's why we're starting to say, okay, we have an understanding of what is good and what is not good. So when we trickle down, we understand what is good and what is not good, and we can give that feedback.
Yeah, I got you.
So that's it. That's a very simplistic way. Obviously, it's more complex than that. But if you boil it down to its parts, that's exactly what happens.
Great. So at what stage is the business right now? I know you've just taken $3 million funding from well, I think it's your sister company. So you're
and local Colombian investors. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well,
So for us, it was easier to tap into local Colombian investors because when you're Colombian, you're never more than 1 degree of separation away from a coffee room. Okay, so everybody understands. So it was easier for us to do that. Where we are at right now is we've proven the concept. A lot of people in the industry, when we started sort of working, they would say, "You're crazy. This is impossible." Okay. We were fortunate enough that a couple of places, of clients in the industry had the technological background to understand that this might be possible, and they believed in us. They believed that this could be the future. And so where we are right now is we've already developed, tested, piloted, and are rolling out an application which actually does described earlier on, which is with a very small sensor, handheld sensor, at the purchase point where the farmer goes and sells his coffee, they're able to determine if it is a particular high value taste profile that they're looking for in that region, or not. And so it's pretty tested. It's tried and tested. We've done obviously the first invoicing. So we believe that at this point in time, we're at a point in time where given that the technology is tested, we have a lot of conversations commercially on development in parallel, and that we believe that it's time for the world to know, and we're in the process of basically doing a bigger financing round to ramp this up worldwide. That's the
Fantastic.
objective. So those are the two sort of main sort of work streams from the market side and from the sort of financing side that supports the growth of the company.
Fantastic. So, so you have a technology, it's proven, you've got some revenues, you've got your seed funding, and you're going to go for your Series A and then go big globally.
That's correct. That's correct.
How exciting. What an exciting. Well, no wonder you're
Yeah,
not getting much sleep. And I can see it's starting to get light outside. So you were there.
that's right.
Literally, we've talked through the night now, Felipe, and
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So unfortunately, I have these because you would hear a combination of traffic and birds chirping all the time. So these are pretty good. No, and you mentioned cocoa,
Mhm.
that you guys cover cocoa. That would be our next step.
You're getting ahead of me now because that was going to be my question. You're making me look like a bad interviewer because
Sorry.
you're answering all the questions before I ask them. Let me just get ahead of that. So Felipe, what's next?
I apologize. So cocoa is next. Uh, we started in parallel with cocoa and coffee, and to be honest, Nick, as a small startup, you need to choose your battles early on.
Mm,
And the big advantage that coffee has over cocoa, which is starting to change, is that in coffee, at least the cupping standard, there's a common language across the board in cupping, and that is a fundamental input to our technology, right?
yeah,
Because if we have a standard, we're able to codify that standard. In cocoa, it's being codified. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
There's
still
actually
at
work underway, but it's not there yet.
yeah, it's not there yet. So it would be ideal for us if that standard would be better once we deploy this to Coco. But it is what it is, right? So we started in parallel because, as you may know, the market structure for coffee and cocoa are sort of twins. Smallholder farmers do not understand their quality, uh, do not have a lever of understanding their quality, do not have access to technology. There's a huge, even bigger than in coffee, which is concerning, but a huge concern on sustainability in cocoa,
Yep.
right? In coffee as well, about whether like coffee growers and cocoa growers are getting older, and there's not a second generation that wants to continue the business. And
Hmm.
we see this as a way also for younger generations to get passionate about the business, giving it. They want to be connected. They want to be in the digital world. So there's a huge parallel from the farmer side, and even more so at the trader and sort of at the roaster side, right? So there's huge overlap. Some
Mm.
of the largest traders in the world in coffee are largest traders in the world in
The same
cocoa as
thing. They're
well.
operating in both commodities. You're right. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So it makes sense to do it to do cocoa, and excuse me, the processes at the farm level are also very similar. So once again, cocoa needs to get fermented, uh, needs to dry like coffee, exactly the same thing. And once again, fermentation, big value driver. and it's like I've seen the fermentation in coffee and I've seen the fermentation in cocoa, and I've seen it. And you ask them, okay, why 4 hours? Oh, this is more or less whatever, and there's no consistency. There's no
No.
consistency.
No,
No.
but it also varies depending, as you say, on the harvest and everything else. And somebody asked this question on the forum last week, and there was actually a poll put out, which was what was the biggest influencer on flavor? This is in cocoa. What was the biggest influencer in
Mm-hmm.
flavor? And the majority said fermentation. And somebody
That's
asked a
right.
question to, I think it was Vincent Moreau in Vietnam, and uh, he's an award-winning chocolate, cocoa producer and chocolate maker, running his own shop. So he's truly, like tree to bar, producer. And they asked the question on fermentation: how do you know when it's the right time to stop? And he said, when it tastes. Yeah, you taste it. And that was it. That was his answer. So yeah, look, I can see this is an industry, as they say in the technology space, ripe for disruption. And it's fascinating what you're doing. I want to, because I know you're limited on time, I want to steer the conversation a little bit towards the future plans. and
Yeah.
and so and also my mind was thinking of different possibilities. So the farmers use this tool, and it becomes a tool where they can
Yeah.
start to get information that they just didn't have before, and maybe start to base some of their decision making on some analysis and facts, and then they can start to steer, even if it's not super granular. They can start to say, let's make some of these bigger changes, or some of these more macro changes, which we know led us in the right direction last time. um, so then they scan, and they get a
Mm-hmm.
result from their phone that says, this is the flavor profile of these beans. I know on your app, one of the things that kind of excited me was that buyers can then look and do a search for a particular type of a flavor that they're looking for, and find a supplier. So my question is this going to be a facilitator for direct trade? And is that part of your business model to build a marketplace?
Yeah. Uh, so the short answer is we don't know yet, right? Because this is as you said, this is potentially one way to address that issue. But evidently, it does give you transparency, because by farmers being able to measure, and this information being in the cloud, a buyer of coffee can detect that information and contact the producer, say, I want your coffee. Um, it's a we really haven't gotten through the thinking process of going there, but uh, could be, could possibly be. Now, the advantage of doing a top-down approach is that when the value chain gets uh, engaged in doing this technology, is that there's a huge incentive for promotion for the farmer. So one of the biggest challenges we have is affordability for the farmer, right? So despite the fact that these sensors are so small, they're literally this size, they're in the hundreds of dollars range.
Mm,
So, and that still leaves out a lot of the farmers out out of that. All right, we're close, but there's the chicken and egg situation that you need huge volumes for it to be low. How do you get the huge volumes if the price is not where it's supposed to be? But we're solving that equation, and the reason that and part of the way we're solving it is that we're giving roasters and traders huge incentive for them to incentivize or foment the use of the technology, or finance, or even subsidize the use of the technology by farmers. So so that's a so it could go either way, but right now the process we're going is exactly what I described right now. We're using the top-down approach also to be able to make sure that farmer affordability is there.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I know that I should have looked this up, didn't do my homework. But IBM has this blockchain solution um, for helping define provenance of where your coffees come from. And so I think Starbucks
Mm-hmm.
did a deal with them, so you can kind of scan your OMR code on a Starbucks cup and take a look. It's called Farmers something or other, I think it's called.
Farmers
Um,
Connect.
Farmer Connect. Thank you. Thank God, one of us did our homework. So, but I mean, the mixed reports I got on social media, and this is very anecdotal, but the mixed report I got on social media was it wasn't giving an awful lot of information. People are a little bit disappointed. At least maybe it was early days. They were disappointed that it didn't really give them a lot of detail from the test that I'd seen people carrying out, and I wondered whether you could throw another trendy technology in with what you're doing and add blockchain to your AI and become super valuable because that you stack these things up, right? And just add another zero onto the
No,
valuation. But no, in all
I
seriousness, have you thought about, if you're doing that, you're scanning it, the question comes is, can you evidence that what was scanned is what is produced, and what people are putting into their cup? Have you thought about that problem?
yes, absolutely. So there's something in the works. So to your last question, so we are working on a traceability application, right? And so our approach is different because since we will be able to connect the physical world with the digital world, and the way to connect those is through the sensory fingerprint. So each individual batch of coffee has an individual sensory fingerprint.
Yeah.
So if we're able to read it to detect the sensory analysis, the cupping, we're able to use it as a fingerprint. So we can track that particular batch of coffee through each step of the value chain. And we can tell a buyer, okay, this coffee is this coffee that got sent by this person, and we can detect it's been adulterated or not, or it's been fidgeted or not. So
Oh, I see.
it's kind of a revolutionary way of doing traceability, because traceability historically has been, I can trace the packaging,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Uh, but it's disconnected with the actual content.
Yeah.
You can
That's
change the
absolutely right.
content.
It's and there's a huge industry all around track and trace on packaging, and everything
Correct.
from holographic stickers to all sorts of things. But it's never really been, for I don't think anybody finds it a particularly ideal solution that we've come across yet. I love the idea of the sensory fingerprint. It's a great name that communicates what it does.
So that's what we're trying to do. It is an ambitious from a technological point of view, because you need massive amounts of data. So it's not sort of in the early stages of our development rollout.
Mm.
It's on the back end, because we need, once we get all the data for all the other things, then we will be able to have that capacity to do that. But it is in a way solving that issue. Solving that issue. It's not only solving what quality, but from where it came from, what's the voyage of that bean through the value chain, so that the consumer understands and really make sure that he's supporting whoever he wants to be supported in the case of fair trade. But
Mhm.
also for the whole value chain, it's huge value, because there's a lot of shenanigans that goes in the industry.
There's, what it's. You really give me a lot to think about. I'm just very conscious of time. We've got a few minutes left, but you've given me a lot to think about, both in the coffee and the cocoa sectors. the cocoa sectors have a different set of problems that they face, especially given in Cote d'Ivoire, especially, and but also in Ghana, basically out of West Africa, they have issues around deforestation and child slavery. And I'm now thinking, wow, if you can actually put a fingerprint on where this cocoa has come from, then I'm wondering. I need to go and think about that, but I'm wondering how that can contribute to the sustainable supply chain problems that big companies as well as smaller companies, but they face, because putting practical audits on the ground, doing audits is expensive, and so people don't do it very often. So there has to be another way. And so listen, we're going to
Well,
wrap it up
there's
because we've got a couple minutes
there's a
left.
solution.
Please.
Let me before that, and we can spill over like 5 minutes
Okay,
because
super.
this is interesting. It's I have an audience. Sometimes, and it's good to have an audience that knows the industry. That typically we need to start from scratch, but this is good because it's both way. It's a good conversation. So related to that point, right? So because that terroir sort of is imprints on that sensory fingerprint, you can detect the region, the coffee or the cocoa was grown. So with big data, you can actually detect, okay, this coffee is Colombian coffee. This is not Colombian coffee.
Right.
Okay. So you can go to that level of sophistication, like Bordeaux tastes different than whatever. It's the same thing. That's what your palate is telling you. Is the same thing that the chemistry is telling. So in a nutshell, that is the direction that we want to go to solve all those issues around ethical sourcing, sustainability, which is what traceability as a whole encompasses.
No, this is really interesting. So we will have to catch up again. When will be another? We'll talk offline, but you're going to tell me when the next point in your business plan has got to, and we can have a follow-on conversation, because I think this is a
Absolutely.
fascinating conversation, and I'd love to keep it going.
Absolutely, Nick. So it's for me, it's as well, because like I said, when somebody knows the industry and resonates, it's also good to know, because obviously this is a business opportunity, but at the core, it's also an impact.
They're the best ones, right? Where you can combine making money with doing something that's actually having a positive impact, then everybody's the winner, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Felipe, thank you so much for your time. You're starting your day. It's light out.
That's true.
So have a great day, and I look forward to following the activities of your business.
Thank you very much, Nick. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Felipe.